Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
This week, today, we look back at the year that was and ahead to the year that will be. Amidst the chaos of the most divided period in American history since the Civil War. Can we unite, or will the balkanization of the United States carry on unabated? And what were the biggest victories and defeats for liberty in this past year? We'll play you what I call maybe the best, maybe the wackiest or most deranged, but certainly the most revealing sound bites of 2019, and bring in two people who watch the goings-on in this nation very closely. My far, far, far better half, and editor-in-chief of the rapidly growing LibertyNation.com, Lisa K. Donner. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Tim.
And our regular contributor to the show, and who, as legal affairs editor, stands as our guardian of individual liberty at LibertyNation.com, Scott Cosenza.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
Hello, Scott.
Hi.
All right. Now, lady and gentlemen.
Oh, thank you.
Let's start with the question I addressed in this opening, and I think it's no longer being over-dramatic in this political climate to ask the question, are we already in a cold civil war, and could we be headed for a hot one? Now, Lisa, you are the editor-in-chief, so you get your pick. You can go first or last.
I think we have been in a cold civil war for some time, and I think it's heating up as we speak. I sat at a Christmas ladies' lunch between two lawyers, and they were saying, how can you impeach somebody on no crime?
There's no crime alleged in the articles of impeachment, neither one of them.
Right. And so I think it's just offending people.
Scott?
We sit in the Commonwealth of Virginia where right now there is a cold civil war, and it's turning hot with respect to the Democrats, the newly elected Democrats' attempt to seize the guns of Virginians. They are pressing gun confiscation and gun controls this Commonwealth has never seen. And if they succeed, I fear we will go from cold to hot.
Cold civil war, hot civil war. We've laid that predicate down for the political climate we're in. And
what do you think?
My feeling is that we've been in a cold civil war since 2016, specifically November 9th, the day after the 2016 election, when they declared that they'd do everything to take this guy out of power no matter what. And it's gone on unabated. I mean, they haven't stopped for 3 years. They were looking for anything to impeach. They've tried everything from the Logan Act to the Emoluments Clause to the 25th Amendment. They tried the firing of Comey, Michael Cohen, Michael Avenatti, Stormy Daniels, all this stuff. And then finally it's a phone call to a Ukrainian president, which I'm sure they thought would never be released.
On CNN, when they unveiled the poll today, the president has gone up like 6 points, and they were flabbergasted.
They can't understand how a president who's being impeached could go up in popularity. But, Scott, we've been talking about this for the longest time, that the impeachment was a suicidal, politically suicidal march for the Democrats, and now they're about to find out. So let's start with Donald Trump himself. We'll move on to the Democrats. We'll move on to stories that affect individual liberty. But let's start with Donald Trump. 3 years in office. How's he doing, Scott?
We have no new wars. We have Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court. I think that's an A+ right there.
I noticed you didn't say Brett Kavanaugh.
Well, that's because I'm not a huge fan of Justice Kavanaugh.
And what distinction do you draw between the two Supreme Court nominees of this president, Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch?
Deference to federal authority versus supremacy of individual rights. And I see that Justice Gorsuch is all about individual rights and the pledge to defend same that is in our founding documents. And when I look at the jurisprudence of Kavanaugh, I see some respect for that, but more interest and respect for the powers that loom large over those rights. And so I'm much more skeptical of him.
Well, going back to your original question, how is Donald Trump doing? I see it as promises made, promises kept. I mean, he said, I'm going to be the greatest jobs president, and he is. Despite a lot of back and forth, they are building the wall. I mean, the wall is being built.
But I'm not so sure if the wall's being built, Lise, or whether the walls are closing in on President Trump.
Feels like the walls are closing in on the White House. It feels as if the walls are closing in here.
I think the walls of justice are closing in on President Trump.
Increasingly desperate, feeling like the walls are closing in. The president clearly feels all the walls closing in on him in terms of the Russia investigation.
The walls are closing in. I think at this point, the walls are spinning. It does feel like the walls are closing in, but I think that the administration at this point can start to see the walls closing in.
He feels the walls closing in on him.
So that's really the narrative that we got from the media all year, that Trump was just this close to being impeached and kicked out of office for any number of crimes he might have committed.
I wonder if on the left anybody has an original thought. What I've really noticed this year is that it's almost like the media has talking points from the Democratic Party. Something happens and this is explosive. That is explosive. This is explosive.
It's all explosive, Lisa.
Right. And now the walls are closing in, and it's just a lot of repetition.
I don't know that you can give Donald Trump a win for the wall. I think that, for the promises kept situation, I mean, I'm not saying he hasn't done what he can to keep that promise.
Yes.
But to call that a win for the administration, I think maybe.
Well,
I think it's
I'm saying he made that promise and he's doing everything he can to fulfill that
I'd
promise.
say that's
And when a politician does that, that to me is very impressive. They haven't. The only thing he seemed to backtrack a little bit on was guns. It's almost like he is. He's in a confused state, and then he talks to somebody like Wayne LaPierre, and then he backtracks. And
it was the worst moment of his presidency when he declared so many thousands of Americans as instant felons with a stroke of his pen by banning bump stocks.
Right.
Now, let me take you to what I think is one of the high moments of his presidency, which was considered a low moment around Washington, which by itself made it a good moment. And that was when the president refused to leave our troops and commanders in harm's way in Syria when an imminent attack was coming from our NATO ally, Turkey. And this is endemic to the swamp, this reaction from Mitt Romney, among other neoconservative Republicans and Democrats, when he said, I don't want to keep our troops in harm's way. We're not going to allow them to be killed with this onslaught. This is the kind of thing he was up against.
The decision to abandon the Kurds violates one of our most sacred duties. It strikes at American honor. What we have done to the Kurds will stand as a blood stain in the annals of American history.
And Trump's response to that was, as usual, common sense.
Why are you siding with an authoritarian leader and not our Kurdish allies?
Well, I'm not siding with anybody. We've been in Syria for many years. Syria was supposed to be a short-term hit, just a very short-term hit, and we were supposed to be in and out. That was many, many years ago, and we only have 50 people in that area. That's a small sector, and I don't want those 50 people hurt or killed or anything. I don't want anything bad to happen to our people, and I told that to President Erdogan. I said, don't hurt any of our people get hurt. Big trouble. They could suffer the wrath of an extremely decimated economy.
So there's the Trump foreign policy. Strength through the projection of a military budget that's increased substantially, but a real reluctance to use American military to intervene in foreign lands. This is a fundamental change, and I think it happened. I'm hoping it happened in that moment where he refused to let those soldiers, American military, stand in harm's way.
Well, we certainly need less war, not more war, and I think that our entanglements that we've gotten into in the past decades have not proven to be advantageous for us, but detrimental to us and the liberty of us and other people around the world. So to get less of that, Tim, is a boon for liberty and another reason why Trump has been a good president.
It seems to me that Mitt Romney has picked up John McCain's mantle and decided to run with it. You know, whatever the president wants, he needs to oppose. And this seems rather important to him. And it's really sad because I think he comes out kind of as a very little petty person.
Indeed.
And I hadn't really thought of Romney in the same way that I had McCain in terms of pettiness.
And he is emblematic of the Washington establishment and the commitment to doing things the way they've always been done, both domestically and in foreign policy.